everyone, theswiftscripter here, and welcome back to another video of this Unity game engine tutorial series. So this is the third part, and I recommend watching the previous part to understand where we are right now. But as you can tell from the title, I am going to introduce you to scripting in Unity. If you haven't written a single line of code before, we'll take it step by step. And by the end of this tutorial, you'll have written your first script to make a game object move. So yeah, without wasting any time, let's just get started right away. So I recommend watching the previous couple of videos if you haven't set up your coding environment yet, because you'll need to have the software called Visual Studio installed. So if you haven't installed that, then be sure to do it and watch resources you need for game development video, which I made a while back. So yeah, now to create a new script, we need to select the game object, which is this game object in this instance. I'm going to delete the plane to remove confusion. So we're going to be using this game object to add a script, and we're going to try making this game object move. So as you can see, there's this button called Add Component, and what we're going to do is click on this. Now, usually, if you type anything random, it will just show this button called New Script. But in this case, we're just going to type New Script. It doesn't really matter what it is. Just be sure it's this button right here and no other component. Click this, and you have to name it as I say, because sometimes the name, it's complicated to change the name, and I'll explain why later. But for now, we're going to call this player movement instead of new script, because we're going to attempt to move this game object. Now, as you can see, it's in the assets folder, which is where all your things, all your assets and models, things like that, that's where they're going to be. They're going to be in this assets folder. They're not going to be in packages, so ignore this. Just know that it's in this folder. So we're going to double click on this and press it to open. So now, as you can see, it looks like this. This is what it looks like in Visual Studio, and it's automatically generated by Unity itself. So it looks really complicated, or it may not have a lot of words, but it may look complicated still because there are lots of confusing words here. So do not worry, because we'll be going over each of these things, what they are, and I'll actually go more in depth in the scripting series which I'm about to make. In this series, we're only learning how to use a Unity game engine, so that's what we're only worrying about today, but I will be going over all the scripting basics in another video. So at the top here, we see these using words, this keyword as it's called. So these are like tools that Unity provides to help us write our code. So using this, it's really necessary to use these to write code for Unity. And then next, after that, in line 5, we see public class player movement mono behavior. This means we're creating something called a class, which is just a way to group our code together. Mono behavior is a fancy term for saying this code will control a Unity game object. So it's controlling the behavior of a game object in Unity. Inside this class, we have two things that we call a method. These two sections, start and update. The start section is where we put code that runs once when the game starts. And the update section runs over and over many times per second, making it perfect for things that need to happen all the time, like checking for player input. So this will happen every single time you press play, or every frame. So it's like on loop. It's just going to keep going. It's not going to stop until you stop the game itself. So if we were to write something in start, it would only run once, and it's at the beginning of the game. This happens every frame of the game. So now let's write our first script to move the cube. First, we'll have to add a line at the top of our class to create a speed variable. So a variable is basically a way of storing certain values in our script. Once again, I'll be going over this later. Chances are you likely heard of what a variable is. If not, it's completely fine. It's for now, just understand that it's a way to store something. We're going to call this public. Public just means it's accessible through Unity itself too. So if we were to say public float speed equals 5, and since it's a float, we have to include this key letter F after our number, and then we'll have to follow this syntax, which is pretty much a way of saying grammar rules in code. You'll have to end each line with a semicolon, mostly. For now, just follow along with this. I'll be explaining what each keyword means, because I only want to go in depth on what the movement will look like. So next, we'll be going inside our update section, and we'll check if the player is passing the arrow keys. So Unity has has a handy tool for this called input.getAxis. So this is what it looks like. The line, you have to follow it exactly as I say. This, you can change it to anything, it doesn't really matter. Make sure it's a valid name, and it follows this syntax called camel case, which is a way of capitalizing the next word and lowercasing the first word. That's how it looks like. And the reason we're using this input.getAxis is because if we go to edit and then project settings, we can see in this input manager, make sure you have input manager clicked, this horizontal and another horizontal right here. It basically accesses this. So it accesses input dot axes, so get axis, and then the thing we're accessing is this thing called horizontal. So we'll be using this to create movement direction for our cube. Think of it like telling the cube to move left or right. There's also a way to make it move vertically, up or down. Just guess what it will be instead of horizontal. Exactly, it's vertical. So it's gonna move up or down if we do vertical instead here. So now we're gonna create a vector 3. Make sure it's a vector 3 because it's in a 3D space. Accesses the 3 axes, which is X, Y, and Z. Movement equals new vector 3 move horizontal 0 F and 0 F. So basically we'll be using this number to create movement direction for our cube. So it's like you're gonna tell it to move left or right based on what this value is. So if it was -1, so the range for this is actually -1 to 1. So -1 moves it left, 1 moves it right. And I'll tell you what to do to actually start moving the object. So what we're gonna wanna do is access the transform of our game object to which this script is attached to. So we'll be using something called transform.translate to do this. And I'll show you how you write it. So we're doing transform.translate. Then in parentheses, we do the movement, which is our value to move left or right, times the speed, and make sure it has time.delta time because this actually enables the object to move smoothly across the world space. So here's what our completed script looks like. You do not need a start method. Here's what our completed script looked like. So save your script, Control S, go back to the Unity editor. So it's gonna show this load icon, meaning you saved it. And now, since this variable we set was public, it's accessible here as I told you earlier. You can change this, change it to 10 or 20, and I'll demonstrate how it looks like. So you can use the A and D keys or the left and right arrow keys to move this game object around. So this is what it looks like in the game view. I'm also gonna disable gravity to demonstrate how it looks like. So this is what it looks like right now. I'm pressing the left or right arrow keys, and now you got your basic movement. So this is like a basic movement script, and it's a great starting point for more complex interactions to your game. So yeah, something else I forgot to note in the last video, but you can change the name. It's pretty simple. I thought I didn't need to go over it, but now I'm just going over it just in case. Some other things I want to note are that I'll be going over each of this in a separate video regarding scripting itself, where I focus primarily on scripting instead of the Unity game engine, because this all seems really complicated, but I'll explain it one by one. Something I recommend doing is going through this Unity documentation to understand more about scripting. So things like transform.translate, that's what we have here. It moves the transform in the direction and distance of the translation. And then we have other things like transform.rotate, which you can guess what it does. It rotates the object. So just things like this are good ways to research and look into aspects of coding yourself. It's a good way. It's also a good practice to search up any questions you have or just ask them. Unity has a huge community, so it's really easy to ask questions and have them answered by other people who probably had the same problems as you. But for now, I recommend going through this website, check out scripting, like things we did here. Let's see, there's input.getAxis. Let's look into what that is. Input.getAxis. So it returns the value of the virtual axis identified by the axis name. So we can also go like horizontal. So just let's click on this. There are lots of things you can do here. As you can see, they did something very similar to what I just did. It translates the game object based on its translation as well as its rotation. Yeah, it's just things like this. Keep in mind to research things like that, and I'll be going more over this in another video, as I said, but for now, this is the tutorial. Yeah, anyways, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, listening to me yap about coding, which I do not like doing, but it's necessary for Unity, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So in the next video, we'll expand on this by using Unity's physics system to enhance player movement. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Bye.